Well, for more on this, joining me live now is Stephen Hamilton, Assistant Professor of Economics at George Washington University and Visiting Fellow at the Tax and Transfer Policy Institute at the ANU. Stephen, thanks for your time this afternoon. If we begin firstly on those sanctions, you've previously said that the sanctions have hit Russia's financial system both extreme and in an immediate way. How would you say the health of Russia's economy is at the moment?
Yeah, g'day, Andrea. Look, I think the sanctions that the world, not just Australia, or not just the EU, not just the US, but the world has imposed on Russia to date are really unprecedented. They're an extreme escalation relative to anything we've seen before. And we can see that Russia has now become the world's most sanctioned economy, ahead of countries like Iran, Venezuela and North Korea. So the moves are tremendous. So I'm very pleased about that. And we can see the impacts immediately. So as soon as those sanctions were announced, the ruble fell by about 30%, the Russian currency. It's now down more than 40%. Right, so that's a massive collapse. And the Russian government has had to respond by imposing pretty extreme interventions like a 20% interest rate, which was passed through on mortgages, capital controls. They're having to take 80% of all businesses' earnings to buy rubles. So they're scrambling on the other side. And my guess at this point is that's probably going to be futile.
In terms of how we see Russia respond, and then if these sanctions continue to keep stepping up as is suggested, how long could Russia's economy survive this?
Yeah, that's a big unknown question. And I don't think anyone knows the answer to that, right? So the issue is the Russian economy has been more or less cut off from the world economy in all sorts of respects. So they... For example, Russian airlines can't really fly anywhere anymore, for example. Airbus and Boeing have cut Russia off from access to spare parts, from access to manuals for repair. So the Russian air fleet, for example, is about to grind to a halt. Russian producers no longer have access to imported parts, which are essential to production. And they can't just replace those immediately, right? So you need a computer chip, for example, in your missile. Well, you can't get those anymore. So we're going to see Russian production grind to a halt, which is going to cause mass unemployment, right? The Russian government itself no longer has access to international capital markets in order to fund its deficit, right? So the Russian central bank no longer has access to its foreign reserves. So we're sort of strangling the Russian economy. The question is, as you said, how long will it last? And we don't know, but I can say with every day, the sanctions bite more and more. And the harder Ukraine fights, the longer they delay the movement of Russian troops, the harder the Russian economy is hit. And I think that's the game, right? It's a sort of war of attrition between Ukraine and Russia and its economy.
Stephen Hamilton, there are those calls, though, to go harder, looking at things such as boycotting Russian oil and gas. What impact would that have on Russia, but as also the world's economy?
Yeah, I think the first thing to understand is, so yes, there were carve-outs for Russian oil and gas, and there are good reasons for that, because cutting off Russian oil and gas would cause, massive costs across the world economy at a time where inflation is already very high. So step by step with these sanctions is the way to go. That's right. Now, we shouldn't pretend, though, that in practice, oil and gas are totally restricted, because they're not. There's all sorts of spillovers. So we can see Russian oil futures, they're having a lot of trouble selling them even into the end of March, and they're selling at huge discounts. We're seeing a whole lot of problems because the sanctions require, affect financial markets, and oil and gas transactions operate through financial markets. So there's all of these spillovers. So I think that the oil and gas revenues that Russia would normally get are highly impaired by even what's done so far. Now, of course, the West could go further. They could shut them down entirely, and that would really cut off the Russian economy's final lifeline. The thing I worry about is sort of escalating too quickly. I think we have to be careful in terms of thinking about how Russia might respond to that. Putin has already called the sanctions an act of war. And I think the current sanctions are so aggressive that with a little bit more time, they will start to bite hard enough that hopefully Putin is under pressure.
If we look at the way Russia has invaded Ukraine, it appears to have been a lot more slower, more difficult than, I guess, what everyone expected. Given Russia's defence spending, is that proof that you can buy kit but not necessarily capability? And then on from that, what lessons should the rest of the world take as it steps up its own defence spending?
Yeah, look, I'm not a military expert, it should be said, but I do know a fair bit about defence procurement, which is the financial process behind which defence material is purchased. Now, the fascinating thing is that Russia spends more than 10 times more than Ukraine on defence hardware. Right, so that is astounding, and the fact that Ukraine has put up such a tough sort of defence is really remarkable given those two scales. Now, the former Russian foreign minister just yesterday said the Russian military industrial complex is rife with corruption and inefficiency. It's pretty clear that Putin invaded Ukraine expecting his military to be far more capable than it actually was. That's a big part of his difficulty so far. I think that has important lessons for a country like Australia, right? I mean, Australia very rarely goes to war. It's we are involved in foreign conflicts, but it's been a very long time since we've had a full military engagement. And I think we, just like Putin, aren't quite sure of what the true capabilities of our military are. And as we look to invest more in our defence capabilities in the coming years, I really think we need to get rid of the waste, get a lot more focused on capability, and that needs to be a priority for whichever party takes government in the next few months.
Stephen Hamilton, thanks for your time today.
Cheers.